Hello everyone, my name is the Storyteller, and today I will share with you some horror stories to help you fall asleep. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. But before that, write down in the comments from where you are listening this and what time it is. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss upcoming horror stories. The Midnight Carver. Chapter 1: A Quiet Town. The town of Coldwater was the kind of place where nothing ever happened. A single main road cut through rows of old brick buildings, the sidewalks crackling with frost every early morning. The population was small, tight-knit, and everyone seemed to know everything about everyone. At least, that's what they liked to believe. The illusion of safety was strongest at night, when lampposts washed the empty streets in amber light, and the residents locked their doors out of habit rather than fear. Kids rode their bikes past the library. Couples walked their dogs after dinner. And the biggest scandal the sheriff dealt with was someone stealing pumpkins off doorsteps in October. But that peace was shattered when, one fog-heavy morning, a jogger found a body. A young woman lay sprawled near the abandoned mill, throat cut clean and deliberate, eyes wide and staring toward the gray sky. Above her, carved into the concrete with something sharp, was a sentence no one in town would forget. The first of 30. The sheriff, Dale Winchester, had been in law enforcement for 34 years and had never seen anything like it. Blood pooled beneath the victim, still warm, meaning the killer had been nearby while the jogger was dialing 911. Crime scene techs worked in silence while Sheriff Dale took a heavy breath, lighting a cigarette with shaking fingers. Coldwater was no longer a safe place, and the Midnight Carver had begun. Chapter 2: The Name Whispered. By noon, the entire town had heard about the murder. The news spread like wildfire in diners, barbershops, and classrooms. The mayor called an emergency town hall while reporters flocked to Coldwater like vultures circling fresh prey. People whispered in groups, voices lingering with fear. Who would do something like that? Did you hear what he carved on the wall? 30 of who? Everyone unlocked old memories of urban legends, rumors that Coldwater once had a killer decades ago, one who took victims at random, never caught, only ever known by a chilling nickname. The Midnight Carver. To most, it had always been a campfire story, a ghost tale to scare kids. But some of the elders remembered. Sheriff Dale remembered. He sat alone at his desk, staring at the old files he had kept buried for 30 years. The first series of killings ended abruptly, without explanation. Dale had been a rookie then, helping carry bodies, cleaning up after scenes he could barely stomach. The carving on the wall today matched the original killer's signature exactly: cold, neat, and mechanical. The killer was either a copycat, or he had returned. Either possibility made Dale's skin crawl. When the sun set, the fog slithered back into town, and while most residents hurried into their homes, one person was already walking the streets with a purpose. A figure in black, carrying a bag of tools, tracing a path toward a new victim. Chapter 3: EMILY. Emily Patterson was 17, tired and angry at the world. She had spent the evening arguing with her parents, slamming the door behind her as she stormed into the night. She needed space, air, anything that wasn't the suffocating pressure of school and expectations. The town was tense after the morning's murder, but Emily didn't care. Fear wasn't something she felt easily. She walked along the empty streets, earbuds in, music muffling the distant hum of cars. Eventually, she turned down the alley behind the school, always her refuge. She sat on a stack of old pallets, scrolling her phone, breathing steady again. That was when she noticed the shadow. Not moving, not shifting, just standing. She looked up, expecting maybe a neighbor, but the darkness didn't offer a face, only the silhouette of someone tall and still. "Hello," she called. No answer. Her heartbeat quickened, not in outright fear but in instinctual discomfort. She stood slowly, backing toward the street. Her phone lost signal, not unusual in Coldwater's alleyways, but tonight it felt like a sentence. The figure began walking forward, slow, measuring each step. Emily turned and ran. She managed half the distance to the street before something hooked around her ankle, metal, sharp, impossibly fast. She crashed to the ground, trying not to scream, but the figure was already on her gloved hands, pinning her to the pavement. Her scream never escaped. By morning, the janitor found her body behind the dumpsters, posed neatly, eyes open, mouth forming a silent gasp of pain. And on the school wall, carved with almost surgical precision, the second of 30. Coldwater's nightmare had only deepened. Chapter 4, PATTRNS. By now, no parent allowed their children outside after dark. Schools shortened their schedules, businesses closed early, and doors gained new locks overnight. The local hardware store ran out of deadbolts and security cameras within hours. Sheriff Dale studied the two murders tirelessly, packing in front of his investigation board, red string connecting photos like arteries. The killer had removed organs from both victims with medical precision, organs not found at the crime scenes. Dale leaned back in his chair. The carver from 30 years ago had done the same thing. A knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. It was Deputy Sarah Hayes, young but sharp. "You need to see this," she said. She handed him a small envelope, postmarked from within town. No return address. Inside was a letter cut from newspaper clippings like some cliché ransom note. "You failed to catch me last time. Let's see if you can do better now. TOCK 30. Dale crumpled the letter in his fist, rage and fear boiling inside him. The message wasn't addressed to the police department. It was addressed to him. As he sat in silence, Sarah spoke again, softer. "Sheriff, you said he disappeared after the 10th victim. Why did he stop?" Dale exhaled a shaky breath. "I don't know, but if he wasn't dead." Sarah's voice trembled. "Then we're dealing with the same man." Dale nodded. Somewhere out there, the midnight carver was watching them struggle and smiling. Chapter 5, the third night. Lisa Hartman was a night shift nurse at Coldwater General. She was used to silence, dim hallways, and the steady beep of machines. She believed in logic, science, and calm under pressure. But even she had begun parking as close to the hospital as possible. Even she checked every shadow twice before walking under it. The hospital lobby, usually open to visitors 24 hours a day, was now locked at 10 p.m. sharp. Still, trouble found Lisa anyway. Her shift ended at 3:15 a.m. She changed into civilian clothes, took the elevator down, and nodded goodbye to the security guard at the desk. She stepped into the parking lot, fumbling for her keys, her brain already in half-exhausted autopilot. She walked past the third row of cars when her headlights flickered on, without her pressing the remote. She froze. For a long moment, Coldwater's night wind was the only sound. Then she heard the footsteps. Measured, deliberate, right behind her. She spun around and saw nothing. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she backed toward her car. She unlocked the door, slipped inside, and closed it with shaking hands. As she exhaled, trying to calm herself, she adjusted the rearview mirror, and the reflection showed a face sitting directly behind her. A gloved hand clamped over her mouth before she could scream. By sunrise, the hospital staff found her hanging from the flagpole, body angled as though posed in display. A message was carved into the concrete beneath her feet. The third of 30. Coldwater had lost another. And the countdown continued. Chapter 6, the media storm. By the third killing, Coldwater was no longer a town, it was a headline. News vans lined Main Street like carnival booths, reporters fighting for the best angle while camera lights flashed in the cold morning air. Microphones were shoved at anyone willing to talk, and panic speculation spread faster than facts. Is there more than one killer? Is this a cult? Are we safe? Sheriff Dale Winchester stepped up to the press podium, eyes shadowed from lack of sleep. He cleared his throat, but before he could speak, a reporter shouted, "Sheriff, is it true this killer is the same as the one from 30 years ago?" Dale's jaw tightened. No comment. Another voice cut in. "Is it also true he's taunting you personally?" No further questions about the investigation. But the crowd wouldn't stop. They were hungry, desperate, and terrified. Dale finally slammed his palms on the podium. "Coldwater is cooperating fully with state authorities. We have additional officers coming in. The town should stay indoors at night. Let us work." He left the stage, ignoring the volley of new questions. Back in his office, he stared at the map of the town, every crime scene marked with red pins. The spacing wasn't random. The killer was circling inward, moving toward the center of town, victim by victim, as if closing a loop. Whatever the pattern was, Dale knew they were running out of time to solve it. Chapter 7: The Carver's Workshop. Somewhere deep in the edge of Coldwater's surrounding forest was a dilapidated barn, consumed in vines and decades of neglect. To anyone passing by, it would look abandoned. Inside, it was anything but. A large work table stood under a single swaying light bulb, covered in surgical tools, scalpels, bone saws, rib spreaders, clamps polished to a mirror shine. A neatly folded apron lay beside them, embroidered with red thread. MC. On a second table were pieces of a puzzle more horrific, carefully wrapped organs, preserved in glass specimen jars. Each jar was labeled with a date and victim number. The killer worked with perfect silence, hands steady as they delicately placed the newest addition, Lisa Hartman's heart, into a fresh jar. 3 down, 27 to go. The killer removed a notebook and flipped it open. Every page was covered with precise handwriting, measurements, charts, sketches of where each piece would go. This wasn't madness. This was engineering. A masterpiece, a project, a sculpture. And the killer intended to finish it. Before dawn, they shut off the light, sealed the door, and walked out into the trees, blending with the mist as if they were part of it. Coldwater never saw them pass. Chapter 8: The Fourth of 30. Sarah Hayes, the deputy, had trouble sleeping. She lived alone in a small apartment above the old bakery, and every creak of the wood floor made her picture a shadow standing in the dark. But she forced herself out of bed early and drove to the station. At 5:47 a.m., the phone rang, high-pitched, frantic. "Sheriff, we just got a call." Dale snatched the receiver. "Tell me." A shaky voice spoke through static. "A boy, young, behind the playground near Forest Road." Dale and Sarah were already sprinting out the door. When they arrived, flashlights cut through the dark. The body lay under the jungle gym, an 8-year-old boy, eyes open, throat cut with surgical precision. But worst of all was the way he was posed, like he was sleeping, like the killer had placed him gently, almost lovingly. Carved into the rubber flooring. The fourth of 30. Sarah felt bile rise in her throat. Dale clenched his fists, shaking with fury. A child. A child meant the Carver had no rules, no limits, no humanity at all. Dale stepped away from the scene, heart pounding. Sarah followed. "Sheriff, are you okay?" Dale stared at the tree line, voice low and venomous. "He wants me angry. He wants me reckless." "Why you?" Dale inhaled slowly. "Because 30 years ago, I almost stopped him." Sarah's eyes widened. "What happened?" Dale shook his head. "I'll tell you the rest when we catch him." They returned to the scene, but deep in the shadows, someone else was watching, smiling behind a black mask. The game was playing out perfectly. Chapter 9, the town starts to crack. By the fourth murder, Coldwater was falling apart. People boarded up windows. Grocery stores ran out of canned food as families prepared to barricade themselves indoors. Some residents packed bags and left town entirely, abandoning homes that had been in their families for generations. The mayor, who once campaigned on community and neighborly trust, now hid behind police escorts. Schools closed indefinitely. Churches filled with desperate residents praying aloud, voices trembling. Everywhere the same question: who would be number 5? Some pointed fingers at neighbors, others at strangers. The fear became feral, paranoia spreading faster than the killer himself. At Miller's gas station, a man pulled a gun on someone simply for wearing a hood at night. Dale had to personally step in and stop the situation from turning bloody. Fear, Dale realized, was doing the killer's work for him. But the sheriff wasn't the only one noticing the panic. The Carver watched from rooftops and back alleys, unseen and unhurried, moving through a town that no longer trusted itself. Their masterpiece was unfolding, and the next victim had already been chosen. Chapter 10, Number 5. The river crossing on the north side of Coldwater was usually peaceful, just a creaking wooden bridge over slow-moving water, surrounded by moss-covered stones and cattails. Few people went there at night, except Jenna Miller. She worked the late shift at the gas station and always walked home the same way, cutting across the old bridge to save 10 minutes. Tonight, she carried a pocket knife on her keychain, gripping it tighter than usual. Halfway across the bridge, she stopped. Someone else was standing at the opposite end, unmoving, waiting. Her breath caught. She tried to speak. "Hello." No answer. She backed away a single step, and the figure took one forward. Jenna turned and ran. She made it 3 steps before something sliced across the back of her calf. She collapsed to the boards of the bridge, knife clattering away. The figure crouched beside her. A gloved finger tapped her lips gently, as if telling her to stay quiet. When dawn arrived, fishermen spotted her body dangling off the side of the bridge, suspended by metal hooks through her shoulders, water gently lapping against her lifeless feet. Carved into the railing, precise and elegant. The 5th of 30. Sheriff Dale stood on the bridge, fists shaking, eyes full of rage. 5 bodies, 25 to go, and still no face. But Dale promised himself one thing. He would not let the killer reach 30. Not again. Chapter 11, a town on edge. Curfews were now mandatory. Patrol cars crawled through the streets like tired metal animals, engines idling in the frigid air. Floodlights had been installed in major intersections, and every house that wasn't boarded shut was glowing from within. No one wanted darkness anymore. The grocery store now had a 7 p.m. closing bell that sounded like an air raid siren. People rushed out with bulging bags, eyes darting everywhere. There were whispered rumors of bunkers, guard dogs, shotgun purchases, and escape plans. Coldwater had become a place where everyone feared being sixth. Sheriff Dale sat inside his office staring at the board of victims, 5 faces that seemed to stare back at him. He reread the old case files from 30 years ago, his hands trembling slightly. 10 victims then. All organs removed. All carved messages left behind. But the 10th killing back then had ended with something strange, an unsigned note delivered to the police. 10 is enough. For now, Dale had always wondered if the killer had been arrested for something unrelated, or left town, or died. But now, seeing the new killings, he realized something else. Maybe 30 had always been the real goal. Maybe the first 10 were just the beginning. Sarah Hayes entered quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You're not going home tonight, are you?" Dale took the cup and shook his head. "Not until I see something I missed, because he hasn't slipped, not once." Sarah gazed at the caseboard. "He's meticulous, surgical. He plans everything. No evidence, no DNA, even the knife wounds look professional." Dale nodded. "He's not improvising. He's following a blueprint." And somewhere in Coldwater, a killer was still working from his own master plan, calm, confident, and far ahead. Chapter 12. The Man at the Diner. At the edge of town sat an old 24-hour diner with chrome walls and flickering neon. Most places closed early now, but the owner, Edna Wilson, refused. "I'm 74 years old," she scoffed. "If some psychopath wants a piece of me, he'll go home with dentures lodged in his throat." A few late-night regulars gathered at the counter out of routine. Tonight, though, the mood was different. Conversations were quiet, jittery. Everyone glanced at the windows every few seconds. Around 2:10 a.m., a stranger entered. Tall, clean coat, polished shoes, black gloves, a face that smiled but didn't feel warm. He took a seat at the counter. Edna looked him over. "Coffee." The man nodded politely. "Black, please." His voice was smooth, controlled, like every word had been test-fitted before leaving his mouth. The other patrons tried not to stare, but something about him felt wrong. Too still, too perfect. Edna poured his cup. "Not from around here, are you?" The man smiled faintly. "Oh, I've been here a long time." Nobody spoke after that. After 10 quiet minutes, the man finished his coffee and stood. "Thank you," he said. "This was delightful." He laid exact change on the counter, not a penny off, and left. The door chimed, and he disappeared into the fog. Edna stared after him, rubbing her forearms to chase away a crawling chill. One of the regulars finally spoke. "Did anyone else feel like that guy was the devil?" No one answered, but everyone felt the same thing. The midnight carver might have just stopped in for a cup of coffee. Chapter 13. The 6th of 30. The 6th killing broke the rules. It didn't happen at night. At 4:22 in the afternoon, with the winter sun still hovering above the hills, a scream erupted outside the Coldwater Public Library. People on the sidewalk watched in horror as a woman stumbled out, blood cascading from her abdomen, before collapsing on the steps. Sarah and Dale arrived minutes later, sirens blaring, crowds scattered. The woman, a 43-year-old teacher named Loretta Hammond, was still barely alive when they reached her. Sarah knelt beside her. "Loretta, stay with me. Who did this?" Loretta tried to speak, eyes wide with terror, but no sound came out. Instead, something fell from her trembling hand, a folded paper. Dale snatched it up. Inside, a single sentence written in dark ink. "Even daylight can't save you." Loretta's pulse faded. Her eyes stopped moving. "Zix," carved on the library's marble pillar in deep, clean letters. The 6th of 30. Dale stood there shaking. This wasn't just a murder. This was escalation. "No time of day is safe anymore," he whispered. Sarah looked around. People were staring from behind windows and car doors, terrified, helpless. The carver had changed the rules. No one could sleep. Now no one could go outside either. Chapter 14. Descent in the ranks. At the police station, panic wasn't much better. Officers crowded around the briefing room, shouting over each other. "He's going to kill someone every day. This is turning into a massacre. We need the FBI. We need the National Guard." Dale slammed his fist on the desk, so hard the room went silent. "Enough." He scanned their faces. These were good cops, but tired, scared, unraveling. "We are getting federal assistance. State investigators arrive within hours, but until then." He pointed at the map. "We locked down every public building, Every bus stop, every alley, no one moves alone. A younger officer spoke up. "Sheriff, what if he's listening to the police radio? What if he planned for all this?" Dale paused. "If he planned for it, then we'll adapt." Sarah stepped forward. "I'll coordinate the foot patrols. Someone should also be tracing those letters." Dale nodded. "Good. No one works alone anymore. Buddy system. If you leave a room, someone goes with you." The officers dispersed, still shaken but with purpose again. Sarah stayed behind. "Sheriff," she said softly, "you're not telling them everything." Dale rubbed his forehead. "If they knew how the last spree ended, they'd run." Sarah swallowed. "Tell me, I need to know." Dale looked at her, face heavy with memory. On the 10th killing, the victim wasn't just killed. Their body was used to send a message. Sarah frowned. "What kind of message?" Dale whispered, "A warning." Before he could explain further, another call came over the radio, and both officers went pale. Someone had reported a missing teenage girl. Coldwater held its breath. Chapter 15, The Hunt Begins. The missing girl's name was Hannah Price, 15 years old, straight-A student, known to walk home from school every day. Her mother said she never arrived. Dale and Sarah were in the patrol car before the call ended. "We have to assume she's alive," Sarah said, gripping the dashboard. "He wants to finish 30. He'll take his time," Dale muttered grimly. They drove street by street, sirens howling. Officers canvassed neighborhoods shouting her name. Helicopters were requested. K-9 units dispatched. Coldwater had turned into a search grid. Suddenly, Dale's radio crackled. "Sheriff, someone found something at the riverbank." They sped toward the water, tires spitting gravel. Officers were already gathered, shining flashlights on a large tree. Sarah sucked in a breath. A piece of clothing, a red school jacket, was nailed to the tree. On its sleeve, a message burned into the fabric. "7 soon." Sarah shivered. "He's taunting us, like he knows we're close." Dale stared into the dark woods. "He wants us in here. This is a game to him." But they had no choice. They pushed into the forest, guns drawn, radios trembling with static. Somewhere in the trees, a young girl was crying quietly behind duct tape, tied to a chair in the carver's workshop. The killer sharpened a blade with slow, deliberate strokes. Hannah's terrified eyes reflected the glint of metal. The midnight carver whispered, "7 must be memorable." Chapter 16, The Woods. The forest outside Coldwater had always been quiet: birds, branches swaying, small animals skittering through dead leaves. But tonight, even nature seemed to be holding its breath. Sheriff Dale and Sarah moved through the trees, flashlights cutting narrow paths of light through darkness that felt thick and suffocating. Other officers spread out in staggered search lines. Every snapped twig made someone whirl around. Every shadow looked like the outline of a man waiting with a knife. Dale stopped suddenly. "Smell that." Sarah inhaled. Metal. And something darker. Blood. This way. They moved toward a clearing, stepping over roots and brambles until they found a patch of disturbed leaves. A shoe print. Recent. Then another, smaller. Sarah swallowed. Hannah. Dale's heart hammered. "We're close." But another officer, a younger man named Foster, shouted from deeper in the woods. "Sheriff, I found something." They ran toward the voice. Foster stood beside a large oak tree. A message was carved deep into its bark. "You can't save everyone." On the ground beneath it was a piece of rope, freshly cut. Sarah's voice cracked. "He moved her. He knew we were coming." Dale clenched his jaw until his teeth hurt. "He's watching us." Somewhere in the trees, the midnight carver stood perfectly still, hidden, silent, grinning beneath a black mask as officers ran past, unable to see him. He whispered to himself, "Seven will be soon." Chapter 17, HNNAH's Hope. Hannah sat in the dark, arms tied behind her, tape across her mouth. She tried not to sob, breathing through her nose in small, panicked bursts. The barn smelled like old wood, cold metal, and antiseptic chemicals. The carver had left her alone moments ago, whistling calmly as he walked outside. She didn't know where he went or what he planned, but she remembered his voice. "You're special, you get to be 7. Tears streamed down her face. She struggled against the ropes, twisting, stifling whimpers of pain. One of the chair legs creaked. The rope dug into her wrists until they bled. But then, one knot shifted. Her right wrist loosened, barely, but enough to slip one hand free after several agonizing minutes. She pulled the tape from her mouth with shaking fingers. She wanted to scream, but she didn't. Instead, she spotted a workbench several feet away. Tools, nails, a small rusted box cutter. Hannah got one foot under her, then another. She stood, chair still tied to her waist, and hopped painfully toward the table. She stretched, fingers brushing the handle of the box cutter. When the door slammed open, the carver stepped inside, head tilted. He stared at her without anger, almost with admiration. "You are braver than most." Hannah froze. The carver slowly put on his gloves. "It almost seems a shame you have to become a number." He reached for his scalpel. Hannah screamed. Chapter 18, the 7th of 30. The scream carried through the woods. Dale froze. "Did you hear that?" Sarah nodded. That was a girl. They sprinted, branches whipping their arms, flashlights shaking with every step. Officers diverted toward the sound, adrenaline spiking. Dale reached a clearing and saw the barn. Old, collapsing, but with a faint light glowing through a crack in the wall. Sarah whispered, "That's it." They moved fast, guns raised, kicking in the warped door. Inside, the scene unfolded in a flash. Hannah struggling on the floor. The carver standing over her, scalpel glinting in his hand. "Don't move," Dale roared. The carver slowly turned his masked face toward them. And he laughed. Not loud, not manic. A soft, delighted chuckle, like a child watching his favorite toy. Then he threw something metallic at the officers. Hannah's chair lifted with shocking strength. Dale dodged, Sarah ducked, and in the split second of confusion, the carver sprinted for the back wall, kicking open a hidden door and disappearing into the trees. Dale ran after him, but saw only shadows fading into the forest. When he returned, Sarah was already comforting Hannah, wrapping her in her coat. "It's okay, you're safe, we've got you." Dale spotted something scratched into the barn wall. Fresh, deep. The 7th failed. Below it, a smaller line. "A replacement is required." Dale felt ice crawl through his veins. Somewhere in Coldwater, the carver was already choosing who would die in Hannah's place. Chapter 19, Local Hero. Coldwater erupted in cautious relief when Hannah was rescued. People cried on porches, hugged their loved ones tighter, and thanked police officers in the street. It was the first win the town had seen since the killing began. Hannah was hospitalized, sedated, and placed under armed guard. Reporters camped outside the building, trying to get a glimpse or a statement. Social media exploded. Heroic rescue. Police finally fighting back. They saved number 7. For the first time, Sheriff Dale allowed himself a moment of pride. He sat by Hannah's bedside, watching her breathe steadily. "We got him off balance," Sarah said softly from the doorway. Dale nodded. "He's angry, that makes him sloppy." But even as he spoke the words, he didn't fully believe them. He had seen the carver's eyes, calm, calculating, even during escape. Sarah continued. We should announce it. Show people they're not helpless. Before Dale could respond, a nurse rushed in with a remote. You need to see this. She turned on the hospital TV. A local news broadcast showed shaky phone footage from 30 minutes earlier. A man lying dead in the street, throat cut, organs removed, body positioned neatly on the pavement. Next to him, carved into the asphalt, the 7th of 30. Sarah gasped. He replaced her. Dale's hand shook. He was killing while we were saving. Hope evaporated just as quickly as it had arrived. Cold water was still losing. Chapter 20, The Profile. By nightfall, Dale had called in a profiler, someone who had studied serial killers across dozens of cases. A middle-aged woman named Dr. Evelyn Carter sat across from him in a dim briefing room, eyes sharp behind thin glasses. She spoke calmly, reviewing the case files and photographs. This killer, she began, is not insane, not chaotic. This is someone with purpose, training, precision. The organ removal is too clean for improvisation. We are looking at someone with medical knowledge, a possibly surgical background. Sarah blinked. A doctor. Potentially, someone who learned to cut with discipline. Dale frowned. Why 30? Dr. Carter tapped the notebook. Numbers matter to him. He sees this as art, as completion. 30 is a perfect block, 3 sets of 10. The first spree 30 years ago, 10 victims. This is the continuation. Sarah leaned back, horrified. You mean he's finishing something he started decades ago? Dr. Carter nodded. Most killers who stop voluntarily do so because they're waiting, planning, improving. This man wasn't dormant, he was preparing. Sarah rubbed her temples. Can someone do that for 30 years? Kill, stop, and start again like he never paused. Dr. Carter looked at her with unsettling confidence. The most dangerous killers can put their life on hold for decades. They build careers, families, they blend in. Dale swallowed. Then he's already known in this town. Dr. Carter closed the file. Sheriff, there is something else. Dale raised an eyebrow. The fact that he's taunting you specifically means one thing. He knows you. Personally. Dale felt the blood drain from his face. Dr. Carter leaned closer. Whoever he is, at some point you shook his hand. Chapter 16, The Lurking Truth. Detective Harper barely slept. The board in his office, photos, documents, and red strings webbing between victims, had begun to show a horrifying pattern. The killer wasn't selecting randomly. He was progressing outward from the town center in a spiral, as if working methodically towards someone specific or marking territory. Harper leaned back, rubbing tired eyes. Every victim had something else in common, a faint chemical residue found only in industrial-strength cleaning solutions, the same kind used in hospitals and morgues. That meant their killer either worked in such a place or had access to one. He opened the drawer of old cold case files from years past and found it. An unsolved murder from 7 years ago. A young man killed the same way. Same throat wounds. Same surgical precision. No leads. But it happened the same month the old hospital transitioned staff and downsized. Harper swallowed. Someone was killing then and had started again. There was a survivor in that older case, too. A janitor who swore he saw someone in a white surgical gown wandering the halls after the shutdown. His statement had been dismissed as shock and hallucination under stress. Now it looked like the only eyewitness they'd ever had. Harper grabbed his coat and bolted. He wasn't waiting another second. Chapter 17, A House of Souvenirs. Jonah stood in his basement again, admiring the trophies displayed on the long wooden shelf. Each item was from one of his victims. A ring, a photograph, a compact mirror, a student ID card, a hair ribbon. memories deliberately stolen from their owners. But tonight his attention was fixed on a small brown leather wallet, neatly placed at the center. The driver's license inside displayed a smiling man, Harper. Jonah had lifted it from the detective's coat pocket at the cafe 2 days earlier. Just a quick brush while passing by, so easy most people never even noticed. He stared at it like a treasure. Harper was special, a challenge, a worthy opponent. Jonah opened his notebook again, crossing out names already completed and circling new ones. His spiral pattern, carefully sketched in red ink, was nearly finished. At the center of the spiral, a single name was written in heavy, bold strokes. Harper. Soon it would be time, but Jonah wasn't rushing. The final kill had to be perfect, beautiful, poetic. He hummed softly, opening a cabinet to withdraw a new blade, scalpel clean, gleaming, polished. He couldn't stop smiling. Everything was falling into place. Chapter 18, The Final Witness. The home of Samuel Price, former hospital janitor, sat on the outskirts of town, surrounded by weed-choked grass and a rusted fence. Harper knocked twice, the wood echoing down the long hallway. The door opened slowly, revealing a man with thinning hair and wide, darting eyes. "Detective Harper," he whispered, voice trembling. "Yes, you gave a statement years ago. I need to talk about the man you saw that night." Price's eyes glistened. He stepped back, allowing Harper inside. The house was a maze of stacked newspapers, unopened mail, and coffee mugs coated with dust. Price lived alone, and the fear had never left him. "I remember him," Price said as they sat. Tall, surgical mask, a clipboard in one hand, scalpel in the other, like he was doing rounds on empty beds. "Why didn't anyone believe you?" Harper asked. Price looked down. Because there were layoffs. They didn't want anyone thinking one of their staff had snapped. Bad for reputation. Harper leaned forward. "Did you see his face?" Price's voice dropped to a whisper. Only his eyes, dead, like he'd already stopped being human. A sudden knocking hit the door. Hard, 3 bangs. Price froze. "Did you tell anyone else I was coming?" Harper asked. Price shook his head. Harper stood, hand going to his gun holster. Bang! The door splintered inward. Chapter 19, The Man in the Mask. Jonah stepped over the shredded remains of the front door, wearing a white coat, gloves, and a surgical mask. The hall light cast him in a stark yellow glow that made his eyes gleam like a predator. Price screamed and stumbled backward, tripping over stacks of newspapers. Harper drew his gun, pointing it directly at Jonah. "Hands where I can see them," Harper barked. Jonah didn't move. He only tilted his head like a curious animal studying a new species. "That's not polite, detective," he said calmly. The voice was quiet, controlled, terrifyingly normal. Harper's heart hammered. "Don't take another step." Jonah smiled behind the mask. Price scrambled toward the back door. Jonah moved like lightning, a flash of steel. A scream cut short. Price collapsed, throat opened like a red smile. Harper fired twice, glass shattering behind Jonah as he dove behind an overturned bookshelf. Then silence. Dust floated in the air. The smell of cordite and blood mixed into a heavy haze. Harper crouched, edging forward. But Jonah was gone. The front window lay shattered, curtains fluttering. Harper ran to Price, checking for a pulse. Nothing. He slammed a fist against the floor, fury boiling through him. Jonah had been right there, right there. The monster was real, alive, and one step ahead. Chapter 20, A Killer's Calling. Jonah walked calmly down the alley 2 blocks from the house, removing his gloves and mask, discarding them in a dumpster as if shedding a snakeskin. He wasn't angry Harper had interfered, quite the opposite. This was thrilling. Harper was proving worthy of being the finale. Jonah pulled Harper's stolen wallet from his pocket, flipping it open again. The smiling photo stared up at him. "Soon, detective," he murmured, stroking the picture as though it were a lover's cheek. "We'll finish this dance." He returned to his house, descending the stairs into his sanctuary. Blood still spotted the scalpel from Price's death, a reminder of the rush. Jonah washed the blade meticulously before placing it back among his tools. On the wall, next to Harper's photograph, he pinned a new Polaroid he had snapped of Price lying on the floor. The collection was growing beautifully. He stepped back, admiring it like a grand mural. 30 spaces in total, 24 filled. Only 6 remained. And the last one. Jonah pressed his fingers against Harper's picture. The final piece of the masterpiece. He closed his eyes and whispered, voice soft and reverent. "Art takes patience." Chapter 21. The evidence no one wanted. By the time the sunrise touched the rooftops, Price's home was surrounded by squad cars. Harper stood outside with hands buried in his coat pockets, fighting off exhaustion. Forensics bagged evidence and cataloged the horror inside. A rookie officer jogged over, pale and tense. "Detective, we found something." Harper followed him inside. On a cracked linoleum table lay a dusty box packed with newspaper clippings, all about disappearances, unsolved murders, and unexplained bodies. "This guy was tracking them," the rookie said, "like he knew someone was doing this." Harper flipped through the clippings. Old victims, all with the same surgical cuts. Price had known the truth for years. He just couldn't make anyone believe him. A coroner nearby whispered to a colleague. "Throat wounds, clean surgical slashes, professional, almost like an autopsy incision." Harper clenched his fist. "I know," he growled. "I've seen this killer's work before." The rookie stared at him. "Sir, do you think he's taunting you now?" Harper didn't answer, because he already knew the real answer. He wasn't just being taunted. He was being chosen. Chapter 22. Routine. Jonah woke before his alarm, as he always did. He stretched, opened the blinds, and let in the soft gray morning light. One might think he was preparing for a normal day. Shower, coffee, change of clothes. But today had a ritual. He stood before the basement wall, admiring the photographs, a mosaic of death framed with surgical neatness. The collection was almost complete, and he ran his fingers lovingly across the edges. Then he selected a new scalpel, running the blade under a magnifying glass. Perfect honed edge, no imperfections. In his mind, the plan unfolded step by step. It was logical, practiced, almost rehearsed. He didn't kill impulsively. He killed with purpose. After breakfast, he put on a crisp shirt and walked into town, blending seamlessly among the morning crowd. No one looked twice. People never suspected the quiet ones. As he passed a barbershop window, he caught a glimpse of his own reflection. Calm, controlled. An invisible predator among sheep. He smiled and continued walking. Tonight, another life would end. And he already knew whose. Chapter 23. Blood on the playground. The next victim was found at dawn in a park playground. Harper got the call while halfway through a stale cup of coffee. He sped there immediately. The sight stole his breath. A jogger in her mid-30s lay sprawled across the sand beneath the swing sets, throat slit cleanly, eyes open to the gray sky. The swing beside her creaked softly in the wind, back and forth, like a slow, mocking applause. A small Polaroid was pinned to her shirt. Harper knelt, slipping on gloves and pulling it free. The picture showed the woman alive only hours earlier, walking her dog in the same park. Jonah had taken her photo himself. A message was written across the bottom, in neat handwriting. 25 down. Harper stared at the woman, cold rage flooding his veins. He stood abruptly. "Lock down the park. I want every camera, every grainy security feed, every set of footprints analyzed." The officers scrambled, but Harper knew it wouldn't help. Jonah planned everything. He always left as silently as he came. Harper's phone buzzed. An unknown number. He answered cautiously. A voice, soft and eerily calm, spoke. "You're running behind, Detective. We don't have many pieces left." Harper froze. "Jonah." A soft chuckle. "I'll be seeing you soon." The line went dead. Chapter 24, Fractures. Harper sat alone in his car far longer than he realized, replaying the killer's voice in his mind. Jonah sounded pleased, almost serene. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't a spree. It was a project. And Harper was the final exhibition. He drove to the precinct, meeting with Captain Graves in a glass-walled conference room. "We need to bring the feds in," Graves insisted. "We can't keep handling this alone." Harper shook his head. "By the time they're fully briefed, Jonah will have killed again. He's accelerating." Graves slammed a hand on the table. "Then you tell me how the hell we're supposed to catch a ghost." Harper stared at the wall. In his head, seeing the pattern Jonah had meticulously drawn with blood and bodies across the town map. "He's getting bolder. He wants me to feel it. He's tightening the circle." Graves softened. "You've been at this nonstop. You look like hell." Harper sighed. "I'll rest when he's dead or in cuffs." "Not before." Harper looked him dead in the eye. "No." As he left the room, he didn't see Jonah's stolen camera photo of him appear, silently taped inside the precinct doors moments later. Chapter 25, Breaking Point. That night, Harper returned home and locked the door behind him. He leaned against it, exhaling wearily. His apartment was silent, dim, and still smelled faintly of takeout containers and stale coffee. He was unraveling, he knew it. Nights blurred together, meals forgot. Sleep barely existed, but the killer wasn't slowing, and neither could he. He splashed water on his face at the bathroom sink and looked at his reflection in the mirror. Hollow eyes, tightened jaw, a man fraying at the seams. A soft knock sounded from the front door. Harper stiffened. Midnight, no one should be visiting. He grabbed his service weapon and moved quietly toward the door. Another knock, deliberate, too calm. Harper's voice tightened. "Who is it?" Silence. He peeked through the peephole. No one. He slowly opened the door a crack. Gun ready. A small envelope sat neatly on the floor. No return name, no stamp. Harper lifted it with a tremor of dread. Inside was a single photograph. Harper sleeping at his desk earlier that morning, and a handwritten line beneath it. "You're almost ready." Harper looked down the empty hallway, heart pounding. Jonah had been here, close enough to touch him. The final act was approaching, and Harper was running out of time. Chapter 26, The Spiral Closes. Morning arrived with no rest. Harper sat in his car outside work, staring at the photograph Jonah had left. His own face exhausted, unaware, captured by a killer only feet away. It wasn't a threat. It was a message. Jonah was saying, "You can't stop me. I'm already inside your world." Inside the precinct, Harper called for an emergency briefing. "We're past playing defense," he said, voice sharp. "We go after him." Maps spread across the table, Jonah's kill radius plotted in red pins. The spiral tightening, always curving inward. The officers stared as Harper traced the invisible center. "It leads here," he said. "This building, this department, me." Captain Graves swallowed. "He's hunting you." Harper nodded. "And if I don't take control, more people die." The precinct fell into silence. Everyone understood what those words meant. Harper wasn't just chasing a killer anymore. He was bait. Chapter 27, Jonah's Preparations. Jonah's basement glowed under surgical lamps as he cleaned instruments with meticulous attention. scalpel, bone saw, rib shears, lengths of sterilized wire, everything laid out like tools ready for a performance. His white coat was hanging freshly pressed on the wall. Tonight was the night. He walked to the display of photos, 25 filled slots, 5 empty. Harper's picture in the center space. Jonah touched it gently, almost affectionately. "You've worked hard to reach this moment," he whispered. "Very few are worthy of being the finale." He sat at his desk and opened his notebook where each victim's name, time of death, and preparation details were logged with professional precision. Clinical, cold. Jonah wrote at the bottom, Phase 30 closure. He closed the book. The last act of the masterpiece would begin at midnight. Chapter 28, Into the Dark. Harper couldn't sit still. Every instinct screamed that Jonah was coming. He triple-checked all locks in his apartment, loaded his firearm, turned off all lights, and sat in the shadows. But silence grew too loud. The ticking clock on his wall sounded like hammer blows. He grabbed his coat and decided something he hadn't dared before. He would confront Jonah first. No more reacting. No more waiting for bodies. He returned to Price's house, the scene of their first face-to-face encounter. Police tape fluttered in the wind. The street was deserted. Harper entered with a flashlight. Dust floated in long dead air. He swept the main room, then moved to the back where broken glass glittered from Jonah's escape. And that was when he saw it. Something had been left on the counter. A fresh Polaroid. A picture of Harper standing in the same room just seconds ago. Written beneath it, "Warmer." A floorboard creaked behind him. Harper spun, gun raised. But Jonah was already gone. A side door hung open, gently swaying. Jonah had been watching, close enough to hear him breathe. Harper gritted his teeth. This was a chase, and Jonah was leading him somewhere. Chapter 29, The Operating Room. The trail ended at the old abandoned hospital. Its windows shattered, metal doors rusted, moonlight spilling onto broken tiles. Harper stood at the entrance, gun drawn, breathing frost into the air. Inside, the smell of mold and old disinfectant clung to the walls. Hallways stretched like veins through the corpse of the building. Jonah had chosen the perfect hunting ground. Harper moved carefully. Each footstep echoed. Somewhere deeper inside, something metallic clattered. He followed the sound to a room where surgical tables lay overturned and dusty curtains hung like dead skin. A single fluorescent lamp flickered overhead. On the central table lay a body covered by a sheet. Harper approached slowly and pulled it back. Captain Graves. Throat slit, eyes glassy. Harper staggered back, rage and grief choking him. A voice behind him spoke. "You were supposed to arrive sooner." Harper turned, gun aimed. Jonah stood in the doorway wearing his white coat, surgical mask down around his neck. He held no weapon visible, just that same calm, clinical expression. Harper's voice broke. "You monster." Jonah smiled softly. "Monster? No, I'm an artist detective. And you're my masterpiece." He flicked a switch. Surgical lights snapped on above them, blinding. This was the operating theater. Jonah's theater. Chapter 30, The Final Cut. Harper fired first 2 shots. Jonah dropped behind a column, one bullet nicking his shoulder. Blood sprayed in an arc, but Jonah remained eerily composed. He lunged with a glint of steel, scalpel in hand, forcing Harper backward. They struggled between rusted equipment, metal crashing as they collided. Jonah slashed Harper's arm, drawing blood. "Stop fighting, detective. Most people are forgotten. I'm offering you eternity." Harper gritted his teeth. "I don't want to be remembered by you." He smashed Jonah's hand against the table, sending the scalpel skittering across the floor. Jonah snarled, a crack in his perfect calm. They grappled, crashing against the surgical table, knocking aside clamps and trays. Jonah slammed Harper back, hands closing around his throat. "It's fitting," he hissed. "A surgeon must always finish what he started." Harper's vision blurred until his hand closed around something cold. A bone saw. He swung blindly, and Jonah screamed. The killer fell back, clutching a now-spilling wound in his side. Harper staggered to his feet, gun raised. "Jonah Blackwell, you're done." Jonah looked up with a twisted, almost tender smile. "You can kill the body, but the art remains." Harper fired. Once, Jonah collapsed, eyes finally lifeless. The room fell silent, except for Harper's ragged breathing. Officers stormed minutes later, alerted by the shots. Harper didn't speak, he just stared at the wall. At the final empty slot, where Jonah had planned to put his picture. Captain Graves' badge was already there. Harper lifted it and placed it gently in an evidence bag. Later, as dawn crept over the ruined hospital, medics carried Jonah's body away. Harper walked outside and finally took a long breath of cold morning air. No trophies, no applause, no victory parade. Just another survivor left to carry the scars. But the spiral had finally ended. Jonah's masterpiece died unfinished. The end. Chapter 1, Tyler Ward. Tyler Ward died in an empty classroom at Copper Hollow High on a rain-drenched Friday evening. The janitor found him slumped over a desk, still wearing his torn hoodie, his knuckles bloodied. His eyes open and frozen in a final look of terror. Everyone who saw his body noticed the same detail. Tyler had scratched something into the surface of the desk with his fingernails. "Let me out." But the scratching hadn't damaged the wood. It had carved into it, as if the desk was soft clay and not solid oak. The coroner ruled it a cardiac malfunction. The police accepted it as an unfortunate but explainable death. The principal closed the classroom and scheduled grief counselors. But the students of Copper Hollow High knew better. Tyler was bullied relentlessly, daily, without mercy, and the ones who tormented him, 5 students who wore their cruelty like a badge, walked the halls still laughing. 2 days after the funeral, the classroom where Tyler died was unlocked again. The desks rearranged, the chalkboard cleaned, the lights turned on. And something woke up. Something that had died angry. Something that wasn't finished. Chapter 2, The 5. The bullies were legendary at Copper Hollow High. Liam Hawthorne, captain of the hockey team. Strong, cocky, and cruel in a way that came naturally. Brianna Heath, beautiful, popular, and vicious with words sharper than blades. Cole Merritt, Liam's right-hand man, who never had an idea of his own but loved enforcing someone else. Jessica Raines, smart, calculating, and the type who never got caught even if she set the school on fire. Ethan McClure, quiet but not harmless. He filmed the bullying, laughed the loudest behind the camera. These 5 had made Tyler's final year a living nightmare. The prank that finally broke him was simple: a locked classroom, a circle of chanting insults, and a promise that he'd never escape. He died alone on the desk where they left him crying. Liam didn't feel guilty. Brianna didn't lose a minute of sleep. Cole bragged about it privately. Jessica rolled her eyes at any mention of tragedy. Ethan uploaded a blurred clip online titled "Loser Breakdown" and got thousands of views before it was removed. The world was unfair, but the world was about to balance itself. Because the dead don't forget. And Tyler wasn't gone. Not anymore. Chapter 3, Locked In. 3 days after Tyler's funeral, Liam Hawthorne stayed late to work out in the school gym. He was alone. At least he thought he was. The sound of rain hammered the rooftop while fluorescent lights flickered overhead. After his final set, Liam threw his bag over his shoulder and headed toward the exit. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from exit signs. He passed Tyler's old classroom, and the doorknob turned. Liam froze. No sound, no footsteps, no shadows, just the doorknob turning slowly. A click. The door creaked open. Liam swallowed. Hello. No answer. He stepped closer. It was stupid, but curiosity is a whisper people can't ignore. The classroom was pitch dark inside, desks lined up in perfect rows. The faint smell of old chalk and dust lingered. Then the lights snapped on, and every desk had the same message scratched deeply into them. Let me out. Liam stumbled back, heart racing. A voice whispered behind him, low and broken. You never let me out. Liam spun. No one there. He bolted down the hallway, panic swallowing him whole, until he reached the glass doors. Locked. He shoved them, threw his shoulder against them, but they wouldn't budge. Rain pounded on the other side. A security camera overhead flickered, static rolling across the feed. The PA system screeched to life, speakers crackling. Then Tyler's voice, impossibly clear. Run all you want. I remember what you did. Liam screamed and sprinted through the school. Unaware, a small shadow followed him from room to room, hovering inches above the floor. Chapter 4, A Seat Reserved. The next morning, Brianna sat in homeroom touching up her lipstick when the room fell silent. Students stared at the doorway. A counselor had brought in a desk. Tyler's desk. The one he died on. The wood still scarred with the words he scratched. Someone, no one knew who, had dragged it from the closed classroom and placed it in row 3. Brianna scoffed. What is this, a shrine? The teacher ignored her. Everyone, please sit. Homeroom is beginning. Brianna rolled her eyes and sat behind the desk. She flicked a strand of hair and whispered to Jessica. Why would they put that here? Jessica shrugged. Administrative drama, ignore it. But Brianna couldn't. Because Tyler's desk felt cold, too cold, like a freezer block was hidden inside the wood. She touched its surface and recoiled. The chill bit into her skin like frostbite. She whispered, okay, that's weird. A student in front of her turned around. Brianna, your hand. Her fingers were blue. She gasped, rubbing warmth into them, flexing them until the flesh regained color. She forced a fake laugh. It's just cold in here. But she didn't touch the desk again. When class ended, the teacher said, Brianna, stay a minute. She stayed, annoyed. I didn't do anything. The teacher placed a folded piece of paper on the desk. For you. Brianna frowned. From who? It was already in the desk. She unfolded the note. It was written in jagged pen strokes. You were first. Brianna dropped the note. The desk suddenly creaked. A bloody fingerprint appeared on the wood. Then another, and another, as if someone she couldn't see was dragging their nails across it from the inside. Brianna screamed and ran out of the room. The teacher stared at the desk. The fingerprints were now gone. Chapter 5, The First to Fall. Ethan McClure spent the evening editing a new video in his basement, some stupid prank compilation he hoped would blow up online. He hummed to the music, tapping keys, lost in his own world, until a notification popped up on his screen. New file DTCTD. He frowned. He hadn't transferred anything. He clicked it open. A video began to play. Rain. A locked classroom. Tyler curled on the floor crying. Ethan's face went pale. This was the deleted footage, the one he thought he erased permanently. It showed Liam and Cole laughing while Tyler begged them to stop. Showed Brianna writing insults on the chalkboard. Showed Ethan himself behind the camera whispering, "Keep going, this'll be gold." Ethan's breath shook. Who restored this? The screen flickered. Frames distorted. Tyler's face filled the camera, eyes black and empty. A voice whispered through the speakers. You watched me die. Ethan ripped off his headphones, but the whisper echoed behind him. He whirled around. No one there. He turned back to the computer, and Tyler was standing in the recording, staring directly at Ethan with corpse-pale skin and a broken neck. Ethan slammed the monitor off. Silence. Until the computer turned back on by itself. Screens flickering. Audio warping. Tyler's voice, now a hiss, poured from the speakers. Lights out, Ethan. The basement bulbs surged, then exploded in a shower of glass. Ethan screamed and stumbled toward the stairs. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked on its own. Ethan pounded the door. Help. Something moved behind him, bare feet dragging, slow, wet, leaving prints on the concrete floor. Ethan turned and saw Tyler in the darkness, his mouth torn open, eyes hollow, skin purple from strangled blood flow. Tyler spoke one last sentence before lunging. Your turn. Ethan's screaming stopped abruptly. By morning, his parents found him slumped over his desk, eyes wide open, face twisted in terror, blood pooling beneath him. The computer monitor still played the video. Tyler's voice whispering on loop. Let me out. Chapter 6. The photo of room 208. As Detective Mara Ellison sat hunched over the evidence board in her dimly lit office, one photograph snagged her attention again and again. It was taken in the old school's abandoned hallway, dated yellowish wallpaper, lockers rusted with age. But what chilled her wasn't the ambience. It was the reflection inside the dusty window of room 208. A boy's silhouette, faint but unmistakable, a thin figure with a uniform sweater and hair hanging low over his eyes, stood staring back at the camera. The officer who took the photo had sworn no one was there when it was shot. Mara zoomed in on the digital scan, her pulse tightening. The face was blurry but sad, angry, hollow. She rubbed her temples. A ghost? Nonsense. She didn't believe that. She couldn't afford to. But then why were there 5 dead bodies in the last 2 weeks, all former students of the same school, all connected, all with no sign of forced entry, no wounds, no fingerprints, just the same frozen expression of horror? Her phone buzzed. Another body had been found. And as she rushed to the scene, she glanced at the picture again. The silhouette was still there. Somehow it looked clearer than before. Chapter 7. The Locker Door. Leo Mercier sat alone in his apartment, staring at the worn yearbook he dug out of a milk crate in the closet. He was sweating, trembling, clutching a bat as if he expected someone to burst in at any moment. Leo wasn't a good person. He never had been. Back in school, he'd been one of the worst tormentors. You could ask anyone if they were still alive. His knees bounced as he flipped to the class pages. There he was, smirking, throwing up a peace sign, and next to him, Ethan Warren. Quiet, small, dead 2 years ago in an abandoned classroom. The same classroom Leo and the others locked him in as a joke. No windows, no help, no escape. They'd forgotten him, but he didn't forget them. A metallic clang cracked through the room. Leo froze. Another clang, louder. It was coming from the hallway. A familiar sound, one he hadn't heard since school. A locker door slamming shut. His throat tightened. No, impossible. He forced himself to look. The hallway was empty, except for one thing. A dented, old, school locker was standing upright at the end of the hall. He hadn't moved it there. It wasn't his. The metal handle shook, rattling violently, as if someone inside was trying to get out. Leo stumbled backward, dropping the bat. Then the locker door slowly creaked open, and from the darkness inside, a voice whispered, "You didn't help me." Leo screamed. Chapter 8: The Classroom of the Dead. Detective Ellison stared at the crime scene, a small apartment with the walls shredded, claw marks everywhere, and blood splattered in wide arcs. No forced entry, no weapon, no footprints. But on the living room floor, etched into the wood, were words that made her stomach twist. Room 208. Another one, the medical examiner muttered softly. No physical cause of death. His heart just stopped. Myra looked around. Something was wrong here, something off the books. She had grown up believing in logic in science, but this wasn't logical anymore. She took a step forward and froze. In the far corner of the room, a scrap of blood-smeared notebook paper was pinned to the wall with a rusted pencil. The handwriting was shaky and desperate. "He's not done." That was all. Myra swallowed hard. She would need to go to the old school. Even just standing outside that place for years had terrified locals. Rumors, vandalism, midnight dares. No one stayed long. It was time to enter room 208 herself, even if she wasn't ready. Chapter 9: The Silent Hallway. The abandoned school loomed in the night like a carcass of peeling paint and broken memories. Windows boarded up, playgrounds empty. The wind howled through crooked fences. Detective Ellison pushed open the main doors, flashlight in hand. The faint smell of dust, mold, and something older, something wrong, drifted out. Her footsteps echoed in a way that made the hall feel endless. Classrooms on each side, open lockers, faded posters still clinging to the walls. And then she heard it. Soft tapping. 3 knocks. She swept her flashlight across the hallway. Nothing. The tapping again, closer now, like knuckles brushing metal. She followed the sound, breath tight in her chest, until she reached a row of old lockers. One of them, 104, was slowly shaking. Tap, tap, tap. Her throat dried. She raised her flashlight and pulled the locker open. Empty. But scratched deep into the back panel were 2 chilling words. "Help me." A gust of freezing air rushed past her, and the tapping suddenly echoed from all directions. Lockers slamming open and shut in a chain reaction down the hallway. Mara took a step back, as the entire school seemed to come alive with metallic screaming. Then, silence. She breathed out once, twice, and then turned to face the final classroom at the end of the hall. Room 208. Chapter 10: Room 208. Mara's hand shook as she reached for the knob. The metal was ice cold, colder than any winter night outside. She swallowed and stepped inside. The classroom was preserved exactly as it had been when it was abandoned. Desks overturned, posters peeling, a chalkboard cracked through the middle. But at the center of the room lay something she wasn't prepared for. A makeshift nest of notebooks, pencil boxes, and torn yearbook pages, all arranged around a single school desk. On the desk was a photograph of a small boy, Ethan Warren, 14 years old, eyes down, scars visible on his cheek. And on the chalkboard, written in giant, frantic strokes, "They let me out." Behind her, the classroom door slammed shut. Mara spun around and saw something taking shape in the darkness. A faint figure of a boy, shoulders slumped, fists clenched. Breathing that wasn't hers filled the room. Mara took one step backward. "Ethan," she whispered. The ghost lifted his head. His eyes were hollow but full of pain, rage, and a single tear rolled down his cheek before evaporating midair. Then he spoke with a voice that rattled the windows. "They trapped me here. Now they can't leave either." The lights flickered, and the investigation had officially crossed into something no training had prepared her for. Chapter 11: Ethan's Last Day. Before Ethan Warren became a ghost, he had been a painfully shy boy. He kept to himself, sat alone during lunch, and rarely spoke unless a teacher forced him to. His sweater always had pulled threads where hands had grabbed him. His backpack straps were fraying from being yanked day after day. And on his final day alive, things had been worse than usual. Jason, Leo, Marcus, Derek, and Trent, the ringleaders, had decided to teach him a lesson for reporting them to a teacher. They didn't know the teacher was too overwhelmed to act. They didn't care that Ethan had been trembling when he left the office. They only cared about the thrill of hunting someone weaker. When Ethan walked into math class that afternoon, Marcus tripped him. Ethan's books scattered across the aisle. Laughter exploded from the room. He tried to stand, but Jason slammed a foot onto his arm. "Going somewhere, rat." Ethan didn't answer. He saw the teacher looking at the wall, pretending not to hear anything. 5 faces stared down at him. He felt the tears burning his eyes, his breathing tightening, and the panic rising like fire. He wanted to scream. He wanted someone to notice. Nobody did. When the bell rang, Jason whispered, "We're not done with you." And they were. That night, they lured him into room 208 with the promise of returning a stolen notebook. They shoved him in. They closed the door. They jammed it shut. Nobody came for Ethan. He screamed until his voice broke, pounded until his hands bled, cried until he had no tears left. The lights went out. The air turned cold. And Ethan died alone. Chapter 12, The First Revenge. Ethan's spirit didn't wake up confused or disoriented. He knew exactly what happened. He had died alone, terrified, unheard. But now, from the other side of the veil, he could hear everything. Every guilty heartbeat of the boys who left him there. Every gasping nightmare they buried under excuses. Every lie they told themselves to sleep at night. He didn't appear immediately. He waited. He waited until the bullies were grown, successful, busy convincing themselves the past didn't matter. Jason was first. He was in his bathroom when the mirror fogged up despite there being no shower running. He wiped the glass and froze. Behind him stood Ethan, head lowered, eyes blackened, hand outstretched. Jason stumbled back, but his body convulsed, his heart seizing. No weapon. No marks. Just terror consuming every corner of him until his pulse stopped. When the paramedics came, they found Jason's last message written in condensation on the mirror. "I'm sorry, but apologies were too late now." Chapter 13, The Officer Who Could See. Detective Ellison wasn't a believer in the supernatural, at least not until she stepped into room 208 and felt Ethan's grief press against her bones. She stood in silence, looking at the flickering outline of the boy. Ethan didn't attack her. He simply stared. His trembling voice echoed. "They locked me in and nobody came." Myra took a breath. "I'm here now." The temperature in the room rose a few degrees. Ethan seemed confused. Nobody had ever spoken to him with empathy since he died. Mara tried again. "I want to stop this. I want to help." Ethan's face twisted from sadness into fury. "They deserve to suffer." "Maybe they do," she whispered, "but killing them won't bring you peace." Ethan's body flickered, his grief twisting violently into rage. "You left me," he cried, his voice overlapping with hundreds of whispered echoes that didn't belong on Earth. "I didn't know you," Mara whispered back. Ethan stepped forward, the walls shaking. "But you know them now." His outline vanished, dissolving like smoke. A chill ran down Mara's spine. He was going after another bully. Chapter 14, The Swimming Pool. Derek had grown into a fitness instructor who spent his evenings at the community center pool. He was alone tonight, finishing laps. Water sloshed quietly. The pool lights cast shimmering lines across the tiled walls. He pulled himself up onto the edge, wiping his hair back. Then, the pool lights all shut off at once. Pitch black. Water shifted behind him. "Hello," Derek called, irritation rising. Someone turned the lights back on. No answer. Just the sound of water rippling, as if someone else had entered the pool. Derek turned on the flashlight of his phone and saw faint footprints made of dripping water walking across the deck toward him. No body, just footprints. Derek scrambled backward. The water churned, swirling violently, forming a whirlpool. A whisper echoed through the chamber. "Let me out." Derek screamed and bolted toward the door, but it slammed shut so hard the tile cracked. Water surged upward, slamming into him like a living wave, dragging him back into the pool. By the time security arrived, alerted by motion sensors, it was too late. Derek floated face up, eyes wide with terror. No visible cause of death, but something had pulled him under. Chapter 15, The Terror Spreads. News began to spread through the terrified circle of former students. Marcus was found slumped over his desk at work, his office walls covered in fingernail scratches that hadn't been there before. Trent barricaded himself inside his house, whispering prayers into the dark, convinced he could hear someone breathing beside him at night. Leo was already gone, found in his apartment with a locker in the hallway that didn't belong. One by one, Ethan was coming for them. Detective Ellison had tried to warn them, but they wouldn't answer her calls. They were too busy locking doors, closing blinds, and sleeping with weapons beside their beds. But Ethan didn't need doors. He didn't need windows. He had learned something in that locked classroom. Walls don't keep sounds out. They keep screams in. And he was getting stronger with every soul he claimed. Detective Ellison sat alone in her car outside the abandoned school, staring at her trembling hands. She had one final realization. Ethan wasn't just haunting the building. He was spreading. And if she didn't stop him soon, the world outside room 208 would become his new prison. Chapter 16, Liam's Nightmare. Liam Hawthorne had never felt true fear until that night. He woke in his apartment to the sound of scratching on the walls. At first he thought it was rats. Then the taps on the windows began, soft, slow, deliberate, like fingernail dragging across the surface of reality. He sat upright in bed. A shadow flitted across the room, tall, thin, boyish, pale skin glimmering in the moonlight, eyes hollow and black. "Tyler, no, Ethan. You didn't let me out," the voice whispered, louder than a human could be, angrier. The words reverberated against his bones. Liam scrambled to his feet, throwing the blanket over his head. The scratching stopped, then the voice directly in his ear. "You'll be next." When he pulled the blanket down, his bedroom mirror had changed. Scratched across the glass, letters deep and jagged. "Let me out." The lights flickered. The air turned icy. Liam's scream was swallowed by the shadows. Chapter 17, Jessica's Warning. Jessica Raines was the smartest of the group, always 3 steps ahead. But the ghost had no need for cleverness. Ethan didn't bargain, he waited. Jessica sat in her office, poring over spreadsheets when the screen of her computer flickered. Her email client opened by itself, typing a single line. "I see you." She froze, then the lights went out. Her office door slammed shut. Papers flew across the room, and her chair rolled backward by itself. Jessica grabbed her phone to call for help, but the line was dead. Then she felt it, cold hands brushing her shoulders, though she was alone. A voice hissed, low and sharp. "Did you ever care?" Jessica's eyes darted around. Shadows twisted, danced, and pooled together into a figure, small, ragged, impossibly thin. Ethan's ghost leaned forward, and the words formed from his voice and the room itself. "You're next." Jessica bolted from the office, slamming doors behind her. But the feeling followed everywhere, like a heartbeat of ice against her skin. Chapter 18, Cole's apartment. Cole Merritt had thought he could outrun the past. He was wrong. He returned home one night to find the walls covered in strange symbols, scratches, symbols and letters forming words he couldn't understand at first. 208, let me out. The lights flickered as a shadow passed overhead. His furniture shifted slightly, as if someone or something was testing him, seeing how he reacted. Cole's mirror reflected a boy standing behind him. Ethan's face, hollow eyes fixed, mouth opening unnaturally wide. Cole spun around, nothing. But a whisper echoed through the apartment. "You laughed at me, I remember." The TV turned on by itself, showing a compilation of every cruel prank Cole had performed on Ethan. Laughter, shoving, taunts, it played on loop, the distorted audio making Cole gag. He ran to the front door, locked. Every window slammed shut, every light went out. And then he heard it, the faint sound of footsteps above him, on the ceiling, packing in time with his own heartbeat. Chapter 19, Mara's confrontation. Detective Mara Ellison knew the deaths weren't random. She understood the pattern now. Ethan was targeting those responsible for his death. 5 people, 5 bullies, one after the other. She returned to room 208, determined to confront the ghost and find a way to stop the killings. The classroom was frozen in time, dust motes drifting through stale air, desks untouched, the chalkboard cracked, and the central desk waiting. She spoke softly. "Ethan, I know you're angry. I know they hurt you, but killing them, that won't let you out." A cold wind swept through the room, papers rustled, the outlines of desks twisted and warped. And then she saw him, Ethan's ghost, standing above the central desk, hair matted, eyes black, fists clenched. "You were supposed to help me," he hissed. "I am trying," she whispered, taking a step closer. "Let me help you move on." The ghost recoiled, howling in rage and sorrow. He slammed a spectral fist onto the desk, sending splinters of wood floating midair like dust in sunlight. "I trusted no one," he screamed, "and you can't stop them from feeling what I felt." Mara gritted her teeth. She had to reach him. "Ethan, you can't stay here. If you do, you'll never find peace. You'll keep hurting them and yourself." The ghost faltered for a fraction of a second. His eyes flickered between rage and sorrow. Chapter 20, The Second Victim. Ethan's fury returned swiftly. Liam Hawthorne's apartment became the stage. He awoke to a chill creeping up his spine. The rain outside battered the windows. Footsteps echoed down his hall, soft, wet, dragging along the floorboards. He reached for his gun. No bullets in it, he had left them elsewhere. The door to his bedroom creaked open slowly, revealing nothing. A whisper, "You never let me out." Then the figure appeared in the corner, thin, pale, impossibly still, eyes hollow, mouth a twisted grin. Liam ran. The room expanded impossibly. Hallways appeared where none existed, walls distorted, every exit vanished. He screamed. Ethan's shadow moved closer, hands reaching out. The chill was unbearable, freezing Liam to the core. By morning, Liam was found collapsed in his hallway, pale, eyes wide, no marks. Heart had simply stopped. On the wall, scratched deep into the wood, "Let me out." The hunt had truly begun. Chapter 21, Brianna's turn. Brianna Heath had never believed in ghosts. Popular, confident, cruel, she thought she had nothing to fear. Until the locker. It appeared overnight in her bedroom. A rusted, dented school locker, exactly like the ones in Copper Hollow High. She had screamed when she saw it, but no one came to help. The door creaked open slowly. Inside, her school books, her photos, her belongings, but all shredded, scratched, ruined. And at the back, carved into the metal with invisible hands, "I remember." The room grew icy. Brianna's breath fogged in the air. The lights flickered. She could hear a whisper. You laughed, you called me names, you pushed me down. The locker slammed itself shut. Brianna ran for the door, locked. The windows refused to open. The whispers followed her, rising in volume, screaming her sins. And then, a hand shot out from the locker, translucent and cold, wrapping around her ankle. She fell, clawing at the metal, screaming as the ghost dragged her into darkness. Her parents found her the next morning, lifeless on the bedroom floor, eyes wide, face frozen in terror. The locker had vanished. Chapter 22, Cole's Descent. Cole Merritt was next. He thought running away, moving states would save him, but Ethan was patient. Cole awoke in a hotel room. The curtains were drawn tight, the TV flickering with static. Then the sound, footsteps echoing down the hallway outside, getting closer. He hid under the bed, the steps stopped, silence. Then the TV switched channels. Footage of Cole in school, tormenting Ethan. Every shove, every insult, every laugh, all displayed on screen. A whisper came from the darkness. You locked me in. Cole's heart raced. He jumped to the bathroom to escape, but the mirror reflected Ethan standing right behind him. Pale, broken neck, hollow eyes. Cole turned, and no one was there. Then the bathroom door slammed shut. The shower turned on by itself, water freezing cold. The tiles cracked as if the room itself was bending. By morning, hotel staff found Cole in the bathtub, lifeless, the mirror etched with a single line in condensation. Let me out. Chapter 23, Jessica's Escape Attempt. Jessica Raines knew she had to leave. She drove hundreds of miles, avoiding cell service, checking into motels under false names. But Ethan didn't need addresses. He didn't need phone numbers. In every room she stayed, she found the same message, written with her own hand but in letters she never wrote. You will pay. Her mirrors fogged with condensation despite the air conditioner blasting. Shadows crawled along the walls. Every time she closed her eyes, she could feel him standing just behind her, watching. Finally, she barricaded herself in a motel room. Nothing moved until the clock struck midnight. The mirror cracked. From the shattered reflection, Ethan reached through, his hand wrapped around her shoulder. The cold was unbearable. She screamed, tried to flee, but the room seemed infinite. No doors, no windows, just Ethan approaching relentlessly. When the police arrived the next morning, Jessica was gone. Only a mirror remained, etched deeply. Let me out. Chapter 24, Detective Mara's Plan. Detective Mara Ellison understood the pattern. The deaths weren't random, they were punishment. And she knew the only way to stop Ethan was to confront the ghost directly. She returned to room 208 with a team. Holy water, cameras, motion sensors, and salt lines drawn across the floor. As they entered, the air froze instantly. The desks creaked, chairs moved slightly. Whispering voices echoed from the corners of the room. Ethan appeared at the center desk. His hollow eyes glowed faintly, rage radiating from his form. You brought them here, he hissed. Yes, Mara said, her voice firm. And I want to help you move on, stop the killings. Ethan's face twisted. They didn't move on. I waited and no one came. I was trapped. Mara stepped forward. I understand, but vengeance will chain you here forever. You'll never find peace. He paused, uncertainty flashing across his spectral face. The room groaned as desks slid slowly across the floor, creating a circle around Mara. Ethan's rage surged, but Mara planted a seed, empathy, understanding, a voice from the living acknowledging his pain. For a moment, the ghost faltered, and that was all Mara needed to act. Chapter 25, The Confrontation. Mara drew a chalk circle around Ethan's desk, symbols from folklore and protection etched into the edges, salt scattered carefully across the perimeter. Stay inside the circle, she instructed. Ethan laughed, a hollow, broken sound. You think a line will stop me? I know it can't, Mara replied, but I can show you a way out. Move beyond this room, beyond this anger. You don't have to hurt anyone else. Ethan's form flickered, his fists loosened, the whispering grew softer. You can see me, he whispered. Yes, Mara said, and I know what they did to you, but your death doesn't have to define them, or you. He stepped forward, but the chalk circle burned faintly under his feet. He recoiled. For the first time, Mara saw sadness outweigh the rage. A single tear rolled down his hollow cheek. The room grew silent. Mara's voice cut through the stillness. You can let go, or you can keep them trapped in yourself too. Ethan's outline flickered, expanding, collapsing, then slowly drifting toward the center of the circle. The ghost's whispers grew distant, softer, fatting like mist. By the time Mara lowered her flashlight, room 208 was empty. For now, the terror had ended. Chapter 26, The Silence After. For the first time since Ethan's death, Copper Hollow High was quiet. No whispers, no scratching, no chilling cold sweeping through hallways. Detective Mara Ellison sat in her office, replaying the events in her head. She knew it wasn't over, not fully. Ghosts like Ethan didn't always vanish. They lingered in fragments of sorrow, anger, and unfinished business. She glanced at the photograph of room 208 she kept on her desk. The desk was empty, dust motes drifting in a sunbeam. She whispered softly, almost to herself. Rest now, Ethan. Outside, the wind rustled the trees. The school remained abandoned, but the oppressive weight that had hung over it lifted slightly. Still, Mara felt eyes on her, not threatening, not angry, observant, watching. The ghost wasn't gone, just waiting. Chapter 27, A Memory Returns. Liam, the first to fall, had survived long enough to tell his story. He awoke in a hospital bed, soaked in sweat, pale as death, heart racing. His apartment had been destroyed, walls etched with "Let me out," his belongings shredded. I saw him, Liam whispered to Mara, voice trembling. In my bedroom, he wanted me to remember. Mara nodded. Ethan remembered every detail, but he doesn't want to hurt you if you acknowledge him. Liam shivered. I keep seeing him in my dreams, the way he died, how he begged. Mara placed a hand on his shoulder. Acknowledging the past is the first step. The ghost won't forget, but maybe he'll stop punishing. Liam's hands shook. Mara could see how fragile he had become. Fear wasn't just memory, it was a new reality etched into his bones. Chapter 28, The Final Bully. Marcus had fled to a cabin in the woods, convinced that isolation would save him. He locked the doors, checked the windows, and armed himself with every weapon he could find. But in the dead of night, the faint sound of footsteps approached from the woods, soft but unmistakable. He swore no one was there. Then the shadow appeared at the edge of the cabin window. Pale, small, broken neck, hollow eyes. Ethan. The door rattled violently. Marcus screamed, barricading himself with furniture, but it was no use. The ghost passed through walls as easily as air. You didn't let me out, Ethan whispered, voice rising to a wail. I waited, you watched. The cabin doors exploded inward. Marcus was lifted off his feet by an invisible force. His body slammed against walls, floorboards cracking. He gasped, eyes wide, until his final breath escaped. Morning hikers would find the cabin empty, except for scratches etched into the wood. Let me out. Chapter 29, Mara's Reckoning. Detective Mara returned to room 208 one last time. She knew confronting the ghost had changed her. She could feel the lingering energy, hear faint whispers of unfinished pain. The classroom was empty, dusty, cold, but not the same cold as before. This was a softer, quieter chill. She closed her eyes, imagining Ethan's final moments, trapped, frightened, longing to be seen. Rest now, Ethan, she whispered aloud. You're remembered, you're not alone. For a moment the air shifted. Light flickered softly over the desk. Dust motes swirled and settled. A faint silhouette appeared at the corner of her eye, then vanished. The whisper returned, softer. "Thank you." And the room fell silent. Chapter 30, Letting Go. Months later, Copper Hollow High remained abandoned. The stories circulated in whispers. The ghost who punished bullies, the classroom no one dared enter. Detective Mara retired from the case, leaving room 208 sealed and undisturbed. She carried the memory of Ethan everywhere, not as fear, but as a reminder. The surviving bullies were forever changed. Liam, Jessica, and others moved away, haunted not by dreams of Ethan but by the echoes of their own cruelty. They lived with guilt in place of fear. And room 208, it waited quiet, empty, but alive with memory. For some ghosts never leave entirely. They linger in the corners of the mind, in the desks we touch, in the echoes of the things we've done wrong. And sometimes, if you listen closely in the dead of night, you can hear a faint, desperate whisper. "Let me out." The end.